amazed to see what good parity we have on this panel. So well done to the organizers. You know, it's usually 4 men, 1 woman. A little bit different today in all respects. So I would like to thank the European Commission for having assembled that panel and for asking me to participate very modestly in introducing the topic. And I will introduce the topic from the perspective that we have at the IMF, which has to do with tackling inequality, of course, which is a topic for the day and one for this session, but from the point of view of sovereigns actually taking their destiny in their hands by actually not counting only on other people's support, aid, assistance, but also on being able to count on themselves in order to generate revenue.
It's really interesting hearing about the importance of developing countries being more self-sufficient, but also all of us minding each other's business, looking out for each other. It's a very important point that you made. I want to introduce everyone to our esteemed panelists. I want to start with Alve Selassie, who heads up the Africa Department for the IMF. Margaret Vestager, who is the Commissioner for Competition for the EC. She's going to talk to us a lot about tax policy as well. That's really her expertise. Richard Dzikunu from Ghana. I'm from Nigeria, so we're kind of rivals, by the way. But he's going to talk to us about getting young people involved in inclusive growth. And Farah at the end as well, who is with Oxfam. Farah, thank you so much for being with us. But before I begin asking questions to the panelists, I really want to ask my first question to all of you, because we really want to make this an interactive session, I hope, about how young people can get involved. But since you're from Ghana and you can give us a more specific example, even as we all talk about ways to raise the tax revenue, it's really important that the government spends the money appropriately. How do they do that? I mean, and you can use Ghana as a specific example. If Ghana was to raise its tax revenue right now, what are the key areas you think your country should be investing in terms of public infrastructure?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like Madam Christina mentioned, you don't only collect more, but you widen the collection, and maybe I'll add, then you spend wisely. And I think when it comes to Ghana and some African countries, maybe that is one of the issues, how to spend resources that you mobilize domestically in a very wise way so that it goes to your areas of priority. And that is one of the things that, as a young person in Ghana, I see that maybe government don't really prioritize in terms of spending domestic resources appropriately. Because we have issues of course, corruption we talk about all the time. But for me, it's more about infrastructure in terms of health and education. Because there is that mother in the community, and all she wants is to be able to put her child to school or to be able to just go to the hospital. First of all, she's not earning enough income. So if health service is free, then she's able to access, or she can go at a subsidized price. Again, if education is also free or at a subsidized price, then she can afford that. So education, health are the 2 main areas I feel tax or domestic resources should go into. However, that is not the case that we see often, because, of course, the MDGs came, there was a lot of euphoria around it, but domestically we raised resources. International development partners also sent money in. But at the end, do we see that the community person has benefited, the mother, that young person? And so that's my area of concern. And so I believe government should spend more in education and also on health. And we hear about issues of corruption, and for me as a young Ghanaian, sometimes some of the things I hear is very disheartening. Because I feel that young people, we talk about demographic dividend, and there should be a lot of investment going into young people at this stage of our lives. But I could give one example, where in my country recently there was news about one of our biggest hospitals. There was a lack of access to water in that hospital. And you can imagine when we don't have water in a hospital, what happens? But in that same period, we had the board of directors of this hospital thinking about buying vehicles. And so we look at the misplaced priority here. And that is why I think there is a problem. And I was happy when our African leaders were making more commitment, because it gives young people hope. But there are resources that I feel that when we just commit them to what they have been specifically targeted for, we will achieve results. I'm in a country where there is a project, a school constructed by the IMF or World Bank with World Bank funding, and the cost of that project compared to the same government, a 6-unit classroom block by the World Bank, and a C-student classroom blocked by my government, and you see the difference in prices. But same building material, same structure. The World Bank funding, there was proper monitoring, there was proper mechanisms, and so the cost came very efficient. The same government building, and there's inflated prices. So we are mobilizing resources domestically, but what are the accountability mechanisms? So for us young people, we care about taxes, we care about all the technical issues. But when we wake up in the morning, we want to be able to take our bags, walk to that school. There is chalk, there is the board, there are textbooks, there is access to water, and if it's for girls, when they get to the school, there is proper sanitation so that they don't stay out of school because of lack of basic infrastructure. So when we take taxes, these are the areas we should focus on. And when we do these basic things for young people, they can access education, they can plan well for their families, and they can come at EDD, sit here and talk, just like I've also benefited from education.
Can we just give him a round of applause? Oh my goodness. That was well said, Richard. So education, healthcare, so Farah about tax administration, and that means the actual ability, of the government to actually go out and collect taxes. I think we can all agree that obviously import taxes, it's a lot easier. VAT is probably a lot easier than actually collecting income taxes on everyday individuals. What are some of the challenges that the Ghanaian government has when it comes to collecting taxes for individuals?
I think for that, I would say we have more of the informal sector in Ghana, and so we realize that the tax is it's more focused on those in the formal working sector. And when you have the informal sector, that also contributes or makes income a lot, but you don't have a way of collecting tax from them, then that's also a problem. So ways of finding innovative ways of making sure that the informal sector also contributes to tax. Because the informal sector, for instance, in Ghana, in terms of those who deal in spare parts, those who deal in petty trades, they actually also make a lot of income. Because, I mean, we know our mothers who trade, those who go and bring goods from outside, most of them are also earning a lot of income. So how do they contribute? And most of them, for the lack of education, feel that escaping tax, not paying tax, they don't feel any responsibility towards paying tax to the state, because they feel they have escaped tax and it's something they should be proud about. So what is the education system to understand why you should pay tax? But of course, if I see how government is spending already the very little it is collecting, whether effectively or wisely, then am I motivated, no matter the amount of education going on, to encourage the informal sector to pay tax? Are they motivated to pay because they've seen that the little that we have paid, we are seeing more schools? The little that they have paid, we are seeing hospitals. So I go to this hospital and I'm told that because tax has improved, government has subsidized hospital bills. Then I know when I pay my tax, this is what it's going in for. If not, people don't pay and they feel happy about it. So what is the core responsibility of a citizen? We want to hold our government accountable, but as a citizen, we have responsibilities. So if you don't perform your responsibility, then it's very difficult. But do we understand that responsibility as citizens? And that is where, like she mentioned, weak institutions. And in my country, when you mentioned the issue of the National Commission for Civic Education, I mean, from my primary school to high school to my university, they've always talked about lack of funds, lack of funds, lack of funds. It's only when it's election and then they make a few posters about how to vote, where to put your thumbprint, or when it's about, you hardly see them coming out because it's always about lack of funds. So if government do not strengthen these institutions, which will in the end make citizens understand their responsibilities, then we have a problem here. So strong institutions is an issue. And I know that when we continue to build upon them, we will achieve results, especially for young people growing up. What we see is likely what we will grow up to also come and follow. So if the system is not put in place now, we will also grow up with the same attitude of evading tax and not feeling even bad about it. So we should have the institutions in place. Civic education should work. It should go to our primary schools, high schools. As we are growing up, there are values that we learn. And in Europe or some other places, it's values. When your values are strong, then you commit to what you have to do. But if my education or my upbringing does not make me see anything wrong with not paying taxes, anything wrong with being corrupt, anything wrong with spending money that is supposed to be meant for community development, then there is also a problem there. So civic education should be strong and geared towards also changing the mindset of people. And lastly, maybe I'll add, I had the opportunity to have an exchange program in Finland for 6 months, which was financed by the Finnish government. And when I got there, the mindset of the people, how they react to situations, the values, and these were things that were very new to me because that was a very new system to me altogether. And I saw how if individuals share the same values and are committed, we can all make a change. And so those are some of the things I learned. And I had the opportunity of interviewing that former Prime Minister Alexander Stoops when I was there. And there was one thing he mentioned that always resonated in my mind, that young people like you are not being, we are supporting you because we want you to go back to your community and make change. That is why we give you scholarship packages to come here. So I believe that if that same mindset that I have believed in, I have seen, and I have imbibed in me, we grow up with that mindset, then if we share the same values, we will just commit to our responsibilities, knowing that we are citizens and we have to do that.
Can I? Go ahead, go ahead. No. Just a speech about reducing inequality, she made a very important point about the small number of people in this world who control the majority of the wealth in the world. Aside from better tax policies, Richard, aside from aid, what would you say were some of the other ways that governments can fight to tackle inequality, particularly in Ghana?
I think one of the key ways to tackle the issue of inequality, first of all, of course, redistribution of resources to enable that families are earning good income and to be able to take care of their kids and give them quality education, quality health care. But also particularly to tackle this, like he mentioned, the issue of civil society organizations. Because there are a lot of things there are a lot of problems in this world, there are a lot of problems in my country, and I believe no matter how passionate my president is or no matter how committed my minister is, he cannot see what is happening in every part of the country. And there are civil society organizations who want to partner with governments to implement policies, to support societies, to bring some growth. So how are we giving more space to civil society organizations? So it's one of the key ways that we can begin to tackle the issue of inequality. Because civil societies could help, they could promote accountability mechanisms, and they can support government with innovative ideas as well. So it's more about opening up the space for civil society, particularly with the mention of the Busan Declaration, which commits one of the accountability frameworks. One of the indicators is about expanding the space for civil society, which leaders have committed to. So if you are willing to mobilize resources domestically, if you are willing to accept financial aid, then be willing to open the space to accept some support from civil society organizations, because they bring out reports, they educate your citizens, and you also better develop. When the issue of political will, when I hear political will, it's very important. But who is giving the will to these politicians? When citizens amass, we have a small political class, and we have the large citizens. When citizens decide, why can't the political will be there? When citizens decide that let this be done, why would politicians say no? Because they form the masses and they vote for you. So empowering citizens with information, making sure that they understand what is going on. If some of these technical debates we are having here, if the ordinary citizen begin to know how much is being lost through corruption, how much is being lost because of mismanagement, I know they are going to really get annoyed, especially the farmer in the village who has been going every day and is exporting product but is not getting the benefit. Maybe he does not understand all of these technicalities. So we need to begin to empower citizens with information. And again, civil society plays a major role. And that is the area where my work's also coming. We go into communities, we educate young people and citizens in general. We try to explain to them government budgets, particularly district assemblies, policies. Maybe we try to investigate, find out this local government said by the end of this year, we'll put a 6-unit classroom block, we'll put a health facility. We try to educate the community. This is what your district assembly has promised, and this is the budget they have to it. Now, at the end of the year, we try and engage them again, especially during elections, because this is where they decide. Have these projects been done? Did they meet your satisfaction? You empower them, and when they are going to vote, they decide. So we need to empower citizens, and when we empower them, that political will, I'm not sure anyone can continue holding it.
You get a round of applause literally for every answer. Before I get your take, Abe, I just want to remind everyone, we are, of course, taking questions from the audience. Just go into the EDD app on your cell phone, and you can type up a question. And I hope all of you have voted on the question I mentioned earlier, which is, what do you think the biggest challenge countries face? Domestic resource mobilization is really all about strengthening our institutions, about holding power to account, about making sure that the wealth trickles down to the poorest members of society, and of course implementing the right policies. And I would add to that that it's not just about words, it's about taking action, and as Madame Lagarde said, not minding your own business. Thank you so much, guys.